Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Helena Warrior. Coming up tonight, Sadiq Khan accuses the Prime Minister of kicking the can down the road on Partygate after MPs vote for an investigation into whether he misled Parliament. New data reveals that nearly 600 under-18s, including those between the ages of 10 and 12, have undergone strip searches by the Metropolitan Police in the last 3 years. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes. Plus, today is Earth Day, and with a reminder to protect the environment, one company tells us what they're doing to help tackle climate change with technology. And a special gig in support of musicians and their mental health is returning to South London, featuring singer-songwriter Newton Faulkner. First tonight, though, after MPs voted last night in favour of an investigation into whether or not Boris Johnson misled Parliament about parties in Downing Street during lockdown, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has said he welcomes the vote. He also accused the Prime Minister of hiding and kicking the can down the road with Partygate.
Well, I welcome the vote this week. I noticed the Prime Minister and the Conservatives backed down as the right thing to do. I don't think that the Prime Minister should be hiding and kicking the can down the road. Let's wait and see what the committee concludes. I think they've made the right decision to delay the start until the police investigation finishes. Why? Because some of the material from the police investigation may assist the committee in their deliberations. What's really important, though, is that those that make the rules don't gratuitously break the rules. And what's clear is across our country, thousands and thousands and thousands of British people did the right thing, made massive sacrifices, didn't attend funerals, didn't say goodbye to their loved ones before they lost their lives, couldn't attend weddings and birthday parties themselves, yet lo and behold, the Prime Minister was hosting them. That can't be right.
Well, that was Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and we'll have a roundup of what happened in Downing Street this week with John Johnston from Politics Home a bit later in the show. Now, new data has revealed that nearly 600 under-18s, including those between the ages of 10 and 12, have undergone strip searches by the Metropolitan Police between 2018 and the end of 2021. The figures come after the case of Child Q, a 15-year-old black schoolgirl who was strip searched at her school in Hackney by 2 police officers without an appropriate adult present and while on her period. The figures revealed that 4 children between 10 and 12 were subjected to searches where intimate parts are exposed in the past 4 years. The strip searches were all carried out under stop and search powers, meaning the child may not have been arrested. The Met Police have said they follow national guidelines and codes of practice for all types of searches. They are reviewing their policy towards strip searches for under-18 following the Child Q case. A German man has been declared an official suspect by Portuguese prosecutors investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann in 2007. Though Portuguese authorities have not formally revealed the suspect's name, he is known to be Christian Bruckner. German police first announced they were investigating him in connection with Madeleine's disappearance in 2020. He has not been charged and denies any involvement in the case. Well, 3-year-old Madeleine disappeared during a family holiday in Portugal 15 years ago, where investigators believe she was abducted from the holiday apartment where her family were staying. Police are appealing for witnesses after a shooting into a residential address in South London and have released images of the vehicles suspected to have been involved in the incident. Officers were called to Hasty Close in Mitcham just after midnight on Thursday, the 31st of March, to reports of shots being fired. It was reported that a dark Audi car carrying 3 men had driven to a block of flats where a brick was thrown through a bedroom window and a shotgun was fired at the occupant of the address. The vehicle fled the scene and there were no injuries. An appeal has been launched to locate a 13-year-old missing boy from Enfield. Police are searching for Andy Litolubi, who was first reported missing last Friday. The young teenager was last seen on the Friday morning in the New Southgate area. Andy is described as a black male of skinny build with short hair and approximately 5 foot 7 inches. However, it is unknown what clothes he may be wearing. Sadiq Khan has today urged Londoners of all backgrounds to join the Met Police. The Mayor of London called on the capital to join the police service as they undergo a recruitment drive with the aim of 4,000 more officers in the next year. Well, the Met is also aiming to recruit more people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. Mr. Khan said he was determined to increase the trust and confidence in the police after the Met faced a series of damaging scandals, including the murder of Sarah Everard by serving officer Wayne Couzens and offensive messages exchanged by a team at Charing Cross. Now, with the current cost of living crisis raising the level of uncertainty across households in the capital, 1 million fresh products are being donated as part of a new package of support for families pledged by the Warburtons Foundation. Well, Dave Bagley is the founder of Urban Outreach, a charity which provides focused support to communities in the capital and beyond. And he's been telling Alicia what is needed.
Well, I mean, there's the traditional stuff that we've become used to, certainly over the last few years, in terms of people getting access to free food. So people who are struggling financially, those who find themselves either going to pantries or to sort of food bank ideas or anything else. The community regeneration we saw through the pandemic, people making stuff available to people, that was quite innovative in many places, and certainly across our country it's been very innovative. So people will be able to get the product. That's the first thing, and I think that's about making it available. So there's bread, there's all those sorts of things, and you, if you're an organisation involved in that, then you can get that, and then you just put that out there for people to be able to use. So there'll be those routes, those traditional routes. I think the other bits are very much around. Again, going back to the negotiation about what you want to do and what difference you want to make.
This project is all about communities coming together, supporting one another. Some research has shown that communities are looking out for each other more, particularly since the pandemic. Is that something that you're experiencing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we saw, I mean, there was a Prime Minister once who sort of referred to this thing as a big society. I think we all in the voluntary sector and charitable world really thought that we were already doing that. I don't think it needed to be a political statement. It's what we do. And I think what the pandemic did was it wasn't just about a need that was out there where people were sort of isolating and locked in and couldn't get access to shopping and so on. It was actually, it released community to be able to become what it really wanted to become. All of us, I believe, want to be useful. We want to make a difference in our lives. We don't want to come out famous. We just want to do something simple for somebody. And I think what we saw in the pandemic was people looking after their neighbours. And this is this, but maybe just a little bit more. It's a bit bigger, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's still the same thing. Maybe it's me looking after the person who lives next door, eyes on the people who live in my street. 17% of people believe, is it 17 or 18%, something like that, believe that they are more involved in their communities. And I mean, that's with the research that went on with the foundation. I think if that was over 2,000 people, and you stretch that further, you probably find the percentage even greater. I think the reality is the pandemic released community to be what it wanted to be. And now we don't want to lose it. We want it to grow. We need to build on it. And we want to create something, I believe, that is not just because there is a great need. It's something we just do naturally.
Although we are seeing an increase in communities looking out for each other, obviously with the current cost of living crisis, more help's needed. With the current situation, could we see more companies like Warburton stepping in and realising actually that they need to help?
I mean, it's the right way to do business, isn't it? It's not. If I've got time, the only thing that I have really is time. I don't have a lot of money, so I have time. Warburtons have products. Somebody else has a product. Somebody else has something else. If everything came together, then you would have enough.
Right, time for a look at sport now, and there's lots of action this weekend. The race for the top four in the Premier League is hotting up with rivals Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur in the hunt for that final Champions League spot. Well, London Live's Henry Thomas Aldridge has more.
Thanks, Helena. There certainly is lots of sporting action for you this weekend. Let's start with the Premier League. Arsenal host Manchester United and have the chance to move into the 4th spot in tomorrow's early kick-off. That may only be for a few hours, though, as there's the small matter of a London derby later in the day. In-form Brentford host Tottenham Hotspur. With only 5 games remaining, the North London rivals are currently level on points, with Spurs boasting the greater goal difference. They'll both be hoping for the other to slip up to finish the day in the final Champions League spot. Just some news from the Chelsea takeover. Arsenal fan and 7-time Formula 1 world champion Lewis Hamilton says it's a dream as he's joined a bid to buy the West London club. He'll be a part of Sir Martin Broughton and Lord Sepp Coe's consortium. This weekend, though, Hamilton will be focusing on the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. It's the first sprint race of the season tomorrow, and that will be deciding the starting positions for Sunday's race. And finally, Premiership rugby champions Harlequins welcome Liga leaders Leicester Tigers to the Stoop tomorrow. Third-placed Quins have won 5 in a row in the league, but have been knocked out of both the Champions Cup and Premiership Cup in recent weeks. Their game against the Tigers will be one of their last real tests before the end of the season playoffs to decide the title. And that's the weekend sporting preview.
There we are. That was Henry Thomas Aldridge there with the Capital Sport Roundup. Well, let's take a look at the weather now. Cloud cover sticking around this evening, with overnight lows staying in the double figures. Tomorrow, it looks like the cloud is clearing for another bright and sunny day. Highs of 17 degrees and a similar outlook on Sunday. Enjoy the weekend of sunshine, though, because it's back down to 13 degrees and cloudy on Monday. Well, just before the break, let's bring you this. Under new rules from the Royal Parks, dogs must be kept on their leads at Richmond and Bushy Park during this year's deer birthing season. The rules will be in place from the 1st of May to the 31st of July, where it's said that deer are at their most vulnerable. Well, the charity said there have been at least 50 incidents of dogs chasing deer in these parks since the start of 2022. Well, it's time for a break now, but when we come back, John Johnston from Politics Home will be here with a roundup of what's been happening this week in Westminster, including the latest updates on the Partygate row surrounding Boris Johnson.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Time now for a look at what's been happening in Westminster and the world of politics this week with John Johnston from Politics Home. John, thanks for joining us. So yesterday evening, MPs voted in favour of an investigation into whether or not Boris Johnson misled Parliament. Just tell us what's happened this week first.
Yeah, so this has come on the back of the Prime Minister receiving a fixed penalty notice for his attendance at one of these gatherings that's being investigated by the Met Police. MPs yesterday, on the back of a Labour motion, were asked to vote for a probe by the Commons Privileges Committee into whether Boris Johnson misled Parliament. Now, this is because Boris Johnson had said earlier this year that he believed all of the rules had been followed at all times, and MPs have said, in light of him receiving this fixed penalty notice, that it's possible that he has been in contempt of Parliament by misleading them. So, as you said, they backed this yesterday, which means that there'll now be an inquiry by the Privileges Committee once the Met Police investigation is concluded.
And just how significant is this? So if Boris Johnson is found to have misled Parliament, what will happen next?
Well, there's a kind of understanding that any minister who's found to have misled Parliament would resign. Now, obviously, we don't know what the outcome of this inquiry would be, but it is certainly significant because as the Commons inquiry runs, it can call witnesses, it can request photographs, it can kind of dig deeper into this issue beyond what the Met Police are doing and also what the Sue Gray report is going to look at. I think really significantly yesterday was just a really bad day for the government because they had attempted to kind of delay this probe by putting forward their own amendment, but then the kind of Conservative whips realised that there was a significant number of Tory MPs who were not going to back the government on this, so they decided to pull that at the last minute, and as a result, the Labour motion went through.
Yes, you mentioned those kind of Conservative MPs. We had, really senior Conservative backbenchers sort of turning against the PM and calling on him to resign. What kind of sway do those figures have?
I mean, there were certainly some MPs who spoke in the debate yesterday who'd already said that they had no confidence in the Prime Minister. But some of their speeches were really quite damning on his leadership. And significantly, we saw new MPs coming forward to criticise him. One of the notable ones is the former Brexit Minister, Steve Baker, who came to the Commons and said that he believed, because of the kind of ongoing scandal with Partygate, that the Prime Minister's time was up. And we've had further MPs today kind of restating, their objections to his leadership and saying it's a case of if and not when there's going to be a confidence vote in him. So this kind of drip of MPs coming out and saying they no longer support him is undoubtedly very damaging.
Absolutely. Well, another issue that Boris Johnson has faced backlash for this week is plans by the UK government to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda. Just give us a rundown on what happened this week.
So this has come on the back of quite a lot of different approaches by the government and the Home Office to try and tackle immigration or asylum seekers coming across the channel in small boats. The government have claimed that this will save lives because it will put people off from coming across, but it's been very heavily criticised by opposition MPs, by some Tory MPs, and also charities and sort of other public figures who are really dismayed by the plans. I think significantly one of the big issues that people are worried about is that when people arrive across the channel, how are they going to be treated? Are they going to be handcuffed? Are they going to be shackled onto these planes, which will then take them to Rwanda for processing? I think there's maybe a belief among some that this was announced, ahead of the local elections in order to try and get their vote out for people who are, really dismayed at what's happening in the channel. But I think, there's also a lot of concern that this plan won't really work as the government hopes, and it might even be dropped before it even begins.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, the policy has been criticised by charities and opposition parties, but also by some Conservatives. Former Prime Minister Theresa May was one to criticise the plan, wasn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. She spoke about how this wouldn't possibly work. It would lead to the breakup of families, and it might actually encourage traffickers to continue what they're doing. We also saw the Archbishop of Canterbury. He spoke out and said that the plan was not something that he was backing, and that led to the Prime Minister reportedly criticising him. I think the government were maybe surprised in some way at the backlash, but I think this is something that's going to rumble on, and we have to see how the plan is going to play out, because in terms of details, it's still quite light on how this is actually going to work, how they're going to fly people out there, what planes they're going to use. So a lot of details still to come out, but I think, as I said, there's a feeling in the government or among some Tory MPs that this was released ahead of the local elections as part of a kind of vote-winning strategy.
Absolutely. Well, John Johnson, thank you so much for joining us here on London Live News. That was John Johnson there with the week in Westminster. Now, today is Earth Day, celebrated annually as a reminder to protect the environment and live a more sustainable life. Well, one company is aiming to do just that by making climate technology a priority, saying it is critical to achieving net zero, both here in London and around the world. Well, I spoke to Gerald Grech from Tech Nation about their work in the climate tech sector.
Climate technology really is any form of technology that helps to either decarbonize our atmosphere or makes us more sustainable as a society or as businesses. Mm-hmm. So a good example could be Olio, which is a company that actually reduces food waste, and that people take a picture of the food that they would like to share with other people. They could be neighbors in their London area or even the UK. And that is a piece of technology that helps people to, pass on food that would have been wasted. That's a good example.
Well, you mentioned obviously food waste there. So, what other sectors does climate tech focus on?
Very much so. So that's there's agriculture, there's energy, there's transportation. I mean, in many ways, climate technology is affecting more and more every part of our daily lives. So, again, the technology is really helping really reshape our economy and our way of living. So there are companies out there that are making the electronic and electrical vehicle revolution come through.
We hear a lot about what we can do as individuals and consumers to help with climate change. But I guess I want to ask, is that enough, or does there need to be kind of intervention higher up?
Well, look, I mean, I think aside from us as consumers and as citizens changing our behaviors, which is absolutely essential to really reduce the temperatures that we're seeing and actually achieving net zero by 2050, climate technology, 40% of climate technology is yet to realize its full potential. So we have to do everything we can in our power, whether as consumers or as businesses, or even as governments, to make sure it is accessible and it is a priority.
So how is Tech Nation helping other companies become environmentally friendly?
So TechNation is very much in the business of building ecosystems and maintaining ecosystems in the technology space. And we run programs, accelerator programs, that minimizes the failure rate that we see in startups. So it's really about smoothing the path to success for these companies, whether it's connections to investors or thinking about how to enter new markets. We are there to help them provide content, community, coaching, and connections really to help them scale. Because as I said, 40% of climate technology is yet to reach its mass potential and adoption. So we're really there to make that happen. We also publish various reports on climate tech investment. London obviously is one of the epicenters in Europe for climate tech investment, and the UK as a whole is third in the world for global tech investments, right? So it's things are very, very positive right now, and I think we as TechNation want to continue raising the bar on that through the various reports and insights that we publish. We've also announced the Tech Zero Pledge. So we're trying to make sure that technology companies play their role and their part in reducing their carbon emissions. And so this is a pledge that enables companies to really commit to publishing their emissions on a yearly basis. And as a result of that, we've also published a toolkit to help companies really think about what scope. There's a number of scopes 1, 2, and 3, which is part of your emissions. There could be direct emissions and indirect emissions, and there's quite a lot of technology jargon that we're kind of trying to de-jargonize as a result of this. So the toolkit is there to help companies really move into the sustainability space in the most informed way.
There we are. That was the CEO of TechNation there. You're watching London Live News with Helena Wadia. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, following the effect of the pandemic on the hospitality sector, 10 independent restaurants in South London get a grant to drive their business forward. We'll be speaking to the director of the scheme. See you soon.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. A reminder of some of today's headlines. After MPs voted last night in favour of an investigation into whether or not Boris Johnson misled Parliament about parties in Downing Street during lockdown, Mayor of London Sadiq Khan has said he welcomes the vote. He also accused the Prime Minister of hiding and kicking the can down the road with Partygate.
Well, I welcome the vote this week. I noticed the Prime Minister and the Conservatives backed down as the right thing to do. I don't think that the Prime Minister should be hiding and kicking the can down the road. Let's wait and see what the committee concludes. I think they've made the right decision to delay the start until the police investigation finishes. Why? Because some of the material from the police investigation may assist the committee in their deliberations. What's really important, though, is that those that make the rules don't gratuitously break the rules. And what's clear is across our country, thousands and thousands and thousands of British people did the right thing, made massive sacrifices, didn't attend funerals, didn't say goodbye to their loved ones before they lost their lives, couldn't attend weddings and birthday parties themselves, yet lo and behold, the Prime Minister was hosting them. That can't be right.
Now, new data has revealed that nearly 600 under-18s, including those between the ages of 10 and 12, have undergone strip searches by the Metropolitan Police between 2018 and the end of 2021. The figures come after the case of Child Q, a 15-year-old black schoolgirl who was strip searched at her school in Hackney by 2 police officers without an appropriate adult present and while on her period. The figures revealed that 4 children between 10 and 12 were subjected to searches where intimate parts are exposed in the past 4 years. The strip searches were all carried out under stop and search powers, meaning the child may not have been arrested. The Met Police have said they follow national guidelines and codes of practice for all types of searches. They are reviewing their policy towards strip searches for under 18 following the Child Q case. Well, new data obtained by Sky News has found that hundreds of crimes have been reported at royal palaces in London over the past 3 years. The Met says 470 offences, including theft, arson and violence, were recorded at Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, St James's Palace and Clarence House. Well, less than 1% of the crimes led to someone being charged, cautioned or fined, and the most offences were for theft in 2019. Now, to mark the Queen's historic Platinum Jubilee, a large sculpture made up of 350 British native trees is to be erected outside Buckingham Palace. The sculpture is called Tree of Trees and will be 70 foot and has been created by designer Thomas Heatherwick. Well, the structure is said to reflect the more than 1 million trees that have been planted across the UK as part of the Queen's Green Canopy initiative. Under new rules from the Royal Parks, dogs must be kept on their leads at Richmond and Bushy Park during this year's deer birthing season. The rules will be in place from the 1st of May to the 31st of July, where it's said that deer are at their most vulnerable. Well, the charity said there have been at least 50 incidents of dogs chasing deer in these parks since the start of 2022. Now, 10 independent restaurants around Brixton are to share a £50,000 grant, enabling the venues to make critical improvements that drive their business forward. The restaurants selected were some at the heart of Brixton's community and culture and owned by individuals from underrepresented groups. Well, this support from the International Downtown Association Foundation and Brixton Bid comes at a critical time for independent restaurants following a devastating couple of years for the hospitality sector.
This initiative, this program is actually being rolled out across 5 places across the world. So Brixton and London, we feel very lucky to have been chosen as one of the 5 locations. And we opened up the process by last year in early December, and essentially was open to all independent businesses that are based in Brixton, no matter how small they were. The key kind of criteria that we have identified that we identified to select the short list and the winners were actually all around being independent and family run, so not chains, not businesses that 5 or more restaurants, and also with a turnover not bigger than, if I remember correctly, it's £2 million. And then the key other criteria was around being run and owned by underrepresented communities, and Brixton being, of course, a place, full of diversity, it was kind of, the ideal place to run this program.
Tell me a little bit about the kind of restaurants that the grant has made its way to.
So the program was very popular in Brixton. We have in excess of 150 independent restaurants, and actually 63 restaurants, eligible restaurants, actually applied. The IDA Foundation has actually completed the shortlisting and actually and decided the winners. Of the 63 applications, only 10 were the winners, and the kind of key themes they have in common is that actually provide quite a lot of additional value to the community, and actually are culturally relevant to Brixton. One of which is obviously Papa's Cafe, which is a restaurant within Papa's Park playground, and some of the other businesses that some of the other independent restaurants actually will receive the grants are Black and White Cafe, Eta Seafood, Jalisco, Kamome. So they're kind of very representative of the international scene that we have from a food perspective in Brixton, and they're also all run by family or and underrepresented groups.
And we're seeing a huge amount of gentrification in Brixton. Are you hoping that this grant will, help certain brand restaurants that are really central to the identity of Brixton to, stay afloat after what's been a really hard couple of years with the pandemic and with lockdowns for hospitality in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for us, obviously, the role that we play in the community as a business improvement district is actually to manage the change that is happening in Brixton over the last decade. So as an organization, we are really focused on supporting the businesses that have made Brixton Brixton, obviously. So in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, the role they played in the community, and also the culturally diverse representation locally. So quite a lot of the work that we do is about that. And of course, when this opportunity with Dine Local came about, we felt it was fitting in the type of work that we do in Brixton. And obviously, we want to help these businesses thrive. Hospitality was obviously hit quite hard during the pandemic, and most of these businesses were able to just survive. And we want to, through this program, help them not just to kind of survive and just keep going, but we want them to thrive.
There we are. That was the director of Brixton Bid there, talking about that £50,000 grant. You're watching London Live News. Time for a final break now, but coming up, Art for the Heart. A new children's book is being released to help kids look after their mental well-being and gain confidence. We'll be speaking to the artist behind it all.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's
trends and places to be.
You can now
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
with stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on
Welcome back to the final part of London Live News. Now, a new book to help children think positively and look after their mental well-being is being released next week. South London-based artist Xavier Leopold created the how-to guide with art-led activities and challenges to get kids creating. Well, rediscovering the joy of painting during the initial lockdown, Xavier joined me in the studio a little earlier to discuss his book, his work and giving back to the local community.
Art for the Heart is a kid's book. It's an activity journal, an activity feeling journal. So there's a lot that's packed in it. It really does help kids find a happier and more confident them. With fully different things that's packed in there, from speaking about trailblazers to confidence building, to finding out more about themselves, picking out who their favourite team is in terms of superhero, and many more. You know, just the ability for them to, you know, step away from their comfort zone and step into their awesome zone.
Absolutely. We can see some of the really cool parts of the book here. How can art really kind of help children process their emotions?
I think art is limitless. I don't really feel like art, unlike, you know, other activities, it's very subjective and it's down to the person. And I really feel like imagination, creativity, and that sense of innovation can really help people dig into, you know, dig into themselves, to explore themselves, and to really find out if, you know, however way they put it, you know, where their talent lies. And I really feel like it really helps me with my well-being, with my mental health, especially during a time when, you know, as well as the pandemic, the large pandemic was mental health during that period. So it's really important that the next generation have the opportunity to use the same tools, essentially, and or to provide them with some sort of tools to help them not only have fun, but also, you know, tap into their well-being.
Do you think that kind of over the generations we've become more aware of maintaining good mental health?
Yes, I feel like it's something that's become a lot more of an approachable conversation. I think it took probably our generation a lot longer due to, you know, our upbringing, you know, coming from immigrant families. Mental health wasn't something that was a priority as such, you know. Maintaining the family and working hard and trying to build something for the future was more important. But I feel like now that our generation is now settled and we're in a world where there's so much being thrown at us, it's important for there to be something for the next generation to really have a head start in understanding, what well-being is, what mental health is, and not stigmatizing it. Which is why I think, art and creativity is a good in for them to step into that understanding.
Absolutely. And, as well as this book, you also go into schools and you run workshops with children. Just tell us kind of what would happen in one of those workshops.
Yeah, sure. So this workshop was an initiative that started in 2020 when I discovered art and what it did for me. And it falls under the Xavi Art community, which is like my philanthropic arm. The initiative started with Natasha Leopold, Carl Canardo and I. We would go into schools and speak to them about what art is, looking at life more dimensional. Me being somebody who is a finance professional and also an artist is an example of that. Carl Canardo will provide more of an intel on confidence building from a motivational perspective, because he's a motivational speaker. And we'll also enlighten them. So around that period, we did the workshops around Black History Month. So we felt like it was important to also give them not only my artworks that have reference to Black history, but giving them examples of heroic people during that period, in a sense of empowering them and showing them that there are trailblazers within that period of life when circumstances were really difficult.
Well, that book, Art for the Heart, is released on the 28th of April, and Xavier's latest collection is on at the gallery at Oxo until Sunday. Now, a special gig in support of musicians and their mental health is returning to the Bedford in South London. The organiser, Laura Westcott, started Music with Meaning to be proactive in helping musicians. The artists play their tracks but also share personal unheard stories about their songs. Well, Henry spoke to Laura and musician Newton Faulkner, who'll be performing at the venue on the 27th of April.
Lord, there's water around my feet.
The aim is to help musicians before they need help by providing coaching with money that we raise. And I usually have a format of one established artist and two emerging artists. However, I do tend to mix it up a bit. And the idea is quite simple. I invite the musicians to share the meaning behind their songs and to open up conversations around mental health and to connect with the audience on a much deeper level. And we've been hosting these for a couple of years now. And I'm very delighted to have Newton as part of our lineup on April the 27th at the Bedford in Balham.
Of course, Newton, you'll be performing as well. It's for an important cause. Did you just jump at the chance?
Yeah, totally. Also, it's a venue that I played loads in the very beginning of my career. I used to do it. I mean, I actually had to start saying no to them at one point because I realised I could play them. I kind of got in with all the different promoters of each different night. So there was one point where I was like, I could play every night next week if I wanted to. And I think I was in danger of becoming part of the furniture. So I had to kind of disappear from there, which was, about 15, maybe longer ago. Like a really long time ago now, so it's going to be amazing to be back.
So Laura, as you mentioned, this isn't the first gig that you've started in support of mental health. Why did you decide to put these nights on in the first place?
I strongly feel that musicians should be heard, and sometimes when you're at a gig and people talk over it, I get quite irritated by that, to be honest with you. And so it's kind of twofold. I wanted to give musicians a platform to be heard, for emerging artists especially, as well as established artists, but also I'm an oversharer. I talk very openly about my feelings and I think it's healthy and I want to encourage other people to do the same. So it just made sense to me to organise a very simple format of that principle. And I'm a musician myself and I had severe stage fright and anxiety when I was training to be an opera singer, and it's preventable. And with coaching, I'm now overcoming my stage fright and performing again. So my aim is to highlight the cause through the gigs and raise money so we can provide coaching for musicians before they need it. So it's about changing the mindset. It's not about mopping up aftercare, which of course is very much needed, but we need to change the model now. And with Music with Meaning, my aim is to grow them into different cities, have other people hosting them themselves, and just build a community of people sharing how they feel through music, which of course is so powerful to do that.
So Newton, you're also a big advocate. Awareness of mental health has improved in recent years, but as Laura said, it's important to be proactive now for the next step.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone was kind of just muddling along until like the last couple of years, where I think it became kind of acutely into focus. For almost everyone I spoke to, so all of my friends who were touring musicians suddenly weren't able to do that, and it was kind of realizing the healthy ways in which they were utilizing music and performance, and some of the unhealthier ways that people were just using it as a distraction from anything else that's happening in their life. And it's an interesting one. You can definitely use it in loads of different ways. There's a huge cathartic element. There's a huge kind of therapeutic element to music. But it can also, I mean, I've made entire albums just so I didn't have to think about anything else. And it's not the healthiest way of doing things. And I've seen people have a whole multitude of different issues, and it's brutal. It's such a tough landscape to survive in. If you chase the wrong things, you'll end up driving yourself a little bit unhinged. And I've seen it happen to multiple people. Like I've got obviously a lot of my friends are musicians, and you see their ups and downs, and you see people that have been promised they're going to be the next big thing, and then when that doesn't happen, the process it takes to kind of readjust, and it is hard. And I do think, especially in a kind of post-pandemic world, at least I really, really hope, post-pandemic thing, I think people have opened up a lot more about the kind of struggles the internal struggles that musicians have, and I think all performers have. I mean, obviously I've been, if you look at lots of kind of famous actors, there's people that throw up before every performance. Like it's definitely not limited just to music.
There we are. That special gig in support of musicians is on at the Bedford on the 27th of April. Time for a final check on the weather now. Cloud cover sticking around this evening, with overnight lows staying in the double figures. Tomorrow it looks like the cloud is clearing for another bright and sunny day. Highs of 17 degrees and a similar outlook on Sunday. Lots to enjoy on the weekend of sunshine, because it's back down to 13 degrees and a bit cloudy on Monday. Well, that's all we've got time for, but for more updates throughout the day, you can follow us on social media at London Live. From all of us here, have a lovely evening.